As I read and hear and listen to the questions and comments being made about the charter, I remember Gene Mullen. I don't know if there's anybody around here that was still around the time. Gene was a long-term member of town meeting. He used to get up and open his comments. He says, "I feel like a mosquito in a nudist colony. I know what I want to say or what to do, but I don't know where to start." Right now, I want to try to keep it brief and to the point. I want to talk to two key elements of the charter. One is adopting a town manager's position, which I do support, but in a different context. And the second is adopting a town council-led government. The thoughts of having a town manager for this town go back to 1994, when we adopted the town administrator's position. The committee, of which I was a member, had two alternatives, a town administrator or a town manager. The decision to go with a town administrator was based on a very simple practical consideration. We knew darn well that the town manager would never pass at that point in time. The town administrator, we thought we had a chance of doing it, and it did, but it passed barely, but with a lot of opposition, particularly, unfortunately, from the Board of Selectmen at the time, and from other town officials. In 1995 and 2003, we had home rule charter commissions again. Both of those proposed change, and I said 1995 and 2003, yeah. Both of those proposed changing the town administrator's position to a town manager. In 1995, they called it the chief administrative officer, but it really was, if you looked at the list of duties, it was comparable to a town manager. In 2003, again, they proposed a town manager. In both cases, it would be Board of Selectmen, town manager, and town meeting. We are told now that the town manager will replace the Board of Selectmen to be the town's chief executive officer. But I will maintain, I'll maintain the details of the charter clearly say otherwise. In a business or a nonprofit organization, the position that is described in our charter would be a chief operating officer or a vice president of operations, and would be responsible to a chief executive or an executive board. Now, our bylaws state that our current bylaws state that our town administrator is responsible to our Board of Selectmen for the execution of that position's duties. The charter clearly states that the town manager similarly shall be responsible to the town council, but obviously with an expanded list of responsibilities. The details in the charter, and this is a point I've been in several arguments with, but I will continue to maintain it. The details in the charter also clearly provide that the council will be the de facto replacement for the Board of Selectmen to serve as the executive board of the town. And one of the things, aside from the words, and it's in there in many places, just look at the organization chart that's offered. Several more examples. The council hires and may terminate, remove, or suspend the manager. The council develops the long-term goals and strategy for the town with the assistance of the manager. I would be in favor tomorrow of voting for a town manager with our present form of government. We do not need a home rule charter to have a town manager. The expanded role of the town manager in a selectman town meeting form of government would be very similar to what is described in the charter. In fact, you can look over a series of histories and you will find descriptions that are very close to same. In fact, if you look in the duties of the town administrator in our bylaw and the duties of the town manager, there's many similarities. Obviously, the town manager has expanded duties, and that's part of the whole. That's the whole point of the thing. The commission states that the council will replace the RTM. That does not adequately describe what the charter actually stipulates. The charter eliminates the Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, and the RTM. In addition to the charter making the council, as I said, the de facto replacement for the Board of Selectmen, thus that's serving as a head of most of the administrative side of town government. It doesn't include the electric department, it doesn't include the school, but basically everything else would fall under the council. The charter says that the council will exercise the legislative powers of town meeting. It doesn't actually say they're replacing it, it exercises the powers. Therefore, we will have a situation, if the charter passes, that the same board of 9 persons will effectively head the administrative functions for most of town government, while simultaneously fulfilling the legislative functions. We then will lose the concept of separation of powers, with the checks and balances, which have been a mainstay of our government since it started in this town. It's always been that way. The separation between independently elected administrative and legislative branches is the fundamental basis for our state and federal governments, and on the local level, for both the mayor council and selectmen town meeting. With the mayor council, they're all independently elected, and there's not a crossover of responsibilities. With our charter, will it be an improvement, and will either side of town government be served properly by the members of our town's executive, if the members of our town executive board are expected to simultaneously wear 2 hats? If I would go before a board and try to present an issue or bring an issue up, which hat are they going to be wearing that night? This is not a criticism of any individual, but this is a fact of life. You're trying to stand on both sides of a fence and trying to do the job. The FinCom and the RTM provide to our voters the authority to have their voices and concerns heard and acted upon. I agree, the RTM, I've been arguing for this almost the 6 years I've been back in the RTM. The RTM should be changed, it can do a better job, it can be more effective. But it does a job, it does provide that checks and balances that we're looking for. Those bodies, that's the FinCom and the RTM, provide the critical means to check actions by the administrative side which voters may believe to be unwise or to be an overreach. Personally, since I've been back, I've been involved in a number of those. In fact, that's one of the things that brought me back. I had retired after about 10 years on the RTM. And just to conclude, there's a test that always should be considered with a proposal like this. Before replacing something which has served well over many years, before replacing it with a new and more modern version, be sure that the replacement actually is something of value. I suggest to your board, because I know you're perhaps going to make a decision, I suggest that this proposed charter doesn't pass that test. And a comment that was made earlier, since 1995, we've had, not including the current one, we've had 2 home rule charters and 6, I've counted them, you have to look up, there are 6 versions of a special act charter was proposed. I'll add one other point that I think is important to consider. We've had, as I said, 9 charter proposals, not including the current one, since 1972. The only charter proposal that ever had a lasting effect was the 1972 charter. The 1972 charter proposed 2 key things: to create the town administrator's, to create an administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen position, and to create the RTM. That charter was defeated 2-1 in the vote. The next year, the Board of Selectmen separately put an article on the warrant to petition the state to have a special act legislation to give the town the RTM. Town meeting passed it. It went to the state. It came back the next year, 94, 2 years later. It was approved on the ballot and the annual election by the voters 2-1. In other words, it switched 2-1 to 2-1 the other way. The administrative assistant position was put into a separate meeting and was approved at town meeting by a simple vote. We always looked at that as saying that's an indication, and I think it's true, in this town, change can be produced incrementally, Don't cobble it up by putting too many things together. The town has been cautioned against that. There was a lady that came down from the state very frequently. Her name was Marilyn Contreras. She cautioned Charter Commission and I'll call it the Charter Committee. Actually, it was a ad hoc government study committee of the selectmen. She cautioned them. The reason that most charters fail, of the ones that do fail, is because they put too much in them. The charter, all a charter has to do, whether it's a special act charter or a regular charter, all it has to do is define your form of government.
Final thought, John, please. Final thought, if you could.
Fine, okay. Define your act of government. If you want to put into a charter all the lesser bodies, all the lesser rules, procedures, that's where you cobble it up and that's where you generate objections. I personally would like to see the town continue with the town meeting form of government. I think we should convert to a town manager, which we can do by special act, and I think we can make major changes in the town meeting by special act. The problem we've had over the years is every time somebody starts to talk about a charter, everything stops for change. This current charter, we started talking in mid-year 2016. At that point, and I went before your board and got that answer, in case you may recall, let's wait to see what the charter is going to do. In 2016, at a coordinating committee, we discussed briefly the question of bringing the town manager position forth as a standalone item. Oh, we're going to wait for the charter again. I think we need some serious effort considered in town government. I understand people want a mayor council, would like to have a mayor council government. I understand. But I think we should focus and put some effort into making what we have work well. And we can do it if we have the will.